Thanks for that introduction, Shane. As stated, my name is Jack Haughton, and today we'll be going over Stringer Topo V24 New Features. Now, one of the new features that's been added to the newest version of Stringer is the Stringer Toolspace. This is a brand new feature that allows you to access various objects within your drawing quickly through the use of a toolspace. This is a cascading ribbon that allows you to access different parts of your toolspace, of your data from the interface. You can see here I've started with the drawing name before moving down to point groups. Opening that up, I'm given access to all the point groups for the drawing, and I'm able to access both my points and my survey strings. If I have any surfaces created from my stringer points, I'm also able to work with my CSA surface. It also allowed you to access the different commands through the toolspace instead of working through the ribbon, as shown by the commands down the bottom here. Further to this, we have a new resources panel which has been added to the toolspace. By selecting this, you're able to get access to various training options regarding Stringer. This means that all of this now lives within the one environment and allows you to access everything quickly and efficiently. To break this down a bit further, you have the Stringer toolspace here, and as shown, you're able to work with a number of different works here. You can see all of the different elements within the software. For instance, if I want to work with any points, I can do so here. By right-clicking, I'm able to use various edits for it. And if I need to work with the strings for whatever reason, I'm able to select those directly and do any edits. Working on, again, this cascading method. By looking at points, since you'll be looking at those first, you can do any edits to those directly before moving on to your survey strings and doing the edits there. So it's all about this efficiency. This cascading method allows you to go from one step to the next. Again, you do have access to any of your other tools. As you can see down the bottom here, I have access to Stringer Connect, all the different creation tools for your points, creating your survey strings, managing your trees or multi-symbols, working with your legend table, transform points, and finally working in Model Viewer. Within the Resources tab, you're able to access various learning resources. This includes things such as your training data, the Getting Started page, the YouTube channel where we often upload videos on different commands along with the webinar you are currently seeing, the blog where we sometimes go a bit more depth into different commands and different issues that our customers are experiencing, the help system where you are able to look up any of the tools that we'll be going through today and any prior tools. The webinars themselves, these will take you directly to where they are located on the YouTube page. Our release notes, which get pushed out with every release of the software. And finally, the help desk, which allows you to directly contact one of our staff members to be able to help you with any issues you may be experiencing. Now, during talks with customers, one of the things that has often come up is the ability to be able to link points quickly. During initial development of the latest version of Stringer, what we chose to do was to work with the Civil 3D point groups, and to allow us to access those point groups, you have to link the Civil 3D point group to Stringer for it to be able to find them. The way to do this is through this point group link, which can be found on your ribbon. Now, if you're running through Stringer Connect, this is actually done automatically. When you run through Connect, the software automatically picks up on what point groups you're using and links it directly to Stringer. If you are bringing points in through Civil 3D, however, you will need to link these points up. So again, Stringer Connect automatically, if you're using Civil 3D's import points, you will have to run through this. Opening up point group link, you are able to then link the status of the point groups. This will decide whether or not the points are being used. And then once you have created the survey strings using that point group, you will actually have it switch from survey strings ? From false to true, meaning that survey strings are being created based on that point group. If you did this normally or before the release of V24, you would have to select each of those and link them manually. With the release of V24, we have added a link all button. This allows customers to rapidly link everything within the point group link interface, meaning that it is far more efficient than how it was. Editing settings came about due to the fact that we wanted users to be able to rapidly and efficiently work through all of their data and do any edits they may need. To accommodate this, what we have added is the override selection option and the add remove asterisk. Add remove asterisk came about as while we were talking with customers while doing reviews of the release of V23, we found that customers were getting confused with the fact they needed to add the wildcard. Now the wildcard is the asterisk you see at the end of the code here, and what it allows is that it's telling the software where a code is going to end. For instance, I have a but currently highlighted. If I had the asterisk removed from here, anytime it finds that code, it's going to use it regardless if it's used another code or not. The wildcard tells it this is where it stops. Anything past here is a part of a different code, is a string number, or is a different kind of property. Meaning that if I have a but 01, it's going to be using that as a string. Similar for multi-coding, if I have that and I have a second code separated by a space, it will recognize that as another code and not the original code itself. So the add remove asterisk allows you to do that rapidly to all of the points within your code set, not just one individual. Out of this also came override selected. This allows you to make a change to any of the other columns within this database, allowing you to use the toggles in the code set entry to decide which element you wish to edit, and then using the actual toggles here to decide how it's going to change. Meaning if I wanted to work with override layer, I would toggle off the other three elements here before using the override layer command to change how I wish it to be viewed. These changes have also been applied to the survey line sets, as you can see here. Stringer Connect has also undergone some improvements. After discussing with various clients, we have found that 3 options are currently being looked at for being imported. The 3 options that have been added are the Leica XML. This allows you to import the original raw values that were located out in the field, so your bearings, your distances as they were recorded. The points file, which allows you to bring in a CSV text file or similar files of a similar nature, and the point file Leica, which reads the adjusted coordinates from the Leica XML. So to differentiate between the XML file types, the difference is that the Leica XML works with the raw data, while the point file Leica works with the adjusted coordinates if any adjustments have been applied to the file. This depends on your Leica instrument. It will not be applied for everyone. So you just keep that in mind when you're running through this. Under display and performance, we have actually added a new settings tab. This allows you to change the display settings within the software. Now this came about as one of the biggest slowdowns for larger jobs is the labeling, and what we have applied here is the ability to modify that labeling. So you can see here we have a performance mode that controls the anti-aliasing that's used for the points, basically decides how many points it takes for that to kick in. You're able to choose a selection color, arc to chord rate, a number of other features to improve the speed and adjust the display of your points within the survey line manager and the 2D viewer. Both of those are influenced by this. The DWG itself will not be influenced by this display, so keep that in mind if you're running through it. Within V23.10, we actually added a convert to Kogo point tool. And what this does is it actually takes any points that have been located within it takes any points that have been exported out from a different program. In this case, they have been exported from Carlson. And what we're actually doing is we're going to convert those points, those Carlson points from block entities into stringer points. From there, you are able to use those points to do things such as creating a surface, using the points to do line work. All of that can then be controlled from here. So it's a great command that I don't think a lot of people actually knew existed, that was added back in V23.10. Another addition that was made with V23.10 was the ability to choose which points are going to be brought in via the tools option within reduce coordinates. So you're able to actually include and exclude points within your survey based on these options here. While this might not seem as useful for users who are working with raw data, for anyone that's bringing in a CSV or a text file, this can be invaluable as it allows you to exclude based on a variety of different functions such as the selection that you currently have, point number, elevation, and polyline. Meaning that you're able to rapidly exclude and include points, making that efficient or a far more efficient process than going through it normally, having to individually ignore points within your survey. Lastly, I want to also touch on the cadastral lines command that was added prior. We do have the ability to select points now, as shown by this icon here. So you're able to select points from directly within your survey, along with going through and adding points. When you've added the points, you're then able to edit those points and work with them further. So you're not limited to only bringing those points in. You're also able to edit them once you've worked with them. A very powerful tool that I want to go in depth a bit more on outside of the V23 release. So now that we've looked at that, let's look at a live demonstration of this. So you can see here I have a blank drawing. Over to the right here I have the brand new Stringer Toolspace. To open this, if it's not already open for you, it's just the first command in your ribbon. So select that and you can see it will open. If you're getting the option Launch Stringer Toolspace, it just means you haven't saved your drawing just yet. Save your drawing, select that Launch Stringer Topo Toolspace, and it will launch into the interface. So don't be too frightened if it comes up with something slightly different. You can see here the beginnings of our cascading tool space. The first option I have here is the drawing. So from here I can access various other settings or global settings to work with my drawing. Point code set lives here, survey, string settings live here, all of that good stuff. You might recognize that it's very similar to what we've got in the ribbon. This is just making it a bit more focused so you're able to find those commands easier. By dropping down point groups, you can see I have access to all of my point group functions or things that would affect my point group as a whole. This includes some things like the Civil 3D point group link command, which by opening we can see all of my point groups that are currently seen by the software. So it can see that I have all of these point groups, but none of them are yet linked. When I go through connect, that would automatically link them. But if I was running through Civil 3D, you can actually link them at this stage before I brought the points in. Simply go link all. You can see that the status is now set to linked. I don't have any survey strings in my software yet, so it's not got anything populated here. I can go create update, and those point groups will now be populated when I bring my information in. So just to show, you can see I have Civil 3D point groups already being loaded. Now, if you're wanting to bring in points, we've got connect down the bottom here. You also have it up here within the ribbon, but we're going to use the tool space as much as possible for today, as that is the new addition. So using the commands down here, I'm able to use a number of the functions that would normally be found in the ribbon. So let's work with connect. I'm going to open that. That's going to open up the connect interface, and from here I want to bring in some data. So first off, I'm going to set up a new project as per normal. And then what I can do is I can add data. Now this is a very standard way of doing it. I would select the folder. That will open up this little browsing interface where I can drop this down and I can see any of the three new options. So the Leica XML, the points file, and the points file Leica option. So I'm able to bring those in as needed. One of the new additions we have though is that we are now able to bring in files through drag and drop. So you can see I have a folder here and I just have a text file here that I wish to bring in. If I want to import that, instead of using the add button, I can instead just grab it and then drag and drop it. From here I'll be asked for the file format, so I know this one's broken down to point, easting, northing in description, so I'll select OK. You can see those points have now been populated into Connect for me. So it's a brand new way to quickly get your data in as efficiently as possible. From here I can go to Reduce Coordinates to open up the Reduce Coordinates tab, and I'm able to use the Tools option here to include and exclude certain options. So let's say I didn't want the top few points being included into my drawing. I can drop down Tools, go Exclude Selected, and you can see they're no longer being applied to my drawing. So you're able to skip past that now. By dropping down Tools again, I can go Include Selected to bring those in. You've also got options such as point number range, so you're excluding via point number range as just said. Include by elevation and polyline. So if you have a line already drawn on the survey, anything that falls along that polyline can be included or excluded. You're able to export out a CAD table if you wish, or even a CSV based on your results in here. So let's bring in our data. So we're going to go create update cargo points to bring all that in. It's gone ahead and created 650 civil 3D points. Create the survey lines here. Tell it which point group it's going to be using. It's gone and found the ones that were used and it's created everything based on that. Choose the civil 3D surface I want my brake lines to be applied to. And we can see we now have some data loaded into our point groups. So if I drop this down here, you can see I now have a number of points to work with and a number of survey strings to work with. Now, the points have been created via the settings that have been set by the drawing, dropping down here. So the point code set is basically being used by the software to validate and make sure that all the points are what you would expect them to be. And the survey string settings is being used to create your survey strings. By opening up the survey string settings, we can see the new options that have been added here. So I'm using the numeric individual layers. I can manually go through and edit each of these, as you can see. But if I want to edit multiple at the same time, I can simply select the ones I wish to edit, use Override Selected, and I'm able to work with various parts of this. Let's say I want to, these were actually meant to have brake lines attached to them. They weren't meant to be empty. I can actually toggle the rest of these options off. So I don't want to work with these options. Toggle on Add Brake Line, make sure the toggle's on because I do want to work with the brake line, and go Override Selected. Due to me not toggling on any of these options here, they are not being used. It's only going to be affecting the brake line, and as you can see, that has been toggled on. If I want them toggled off, simply select that again, Override Selected, and they're no longer being used. The same applies to the Add Remove Asterisk. Simply use that toggle to add or remove the different aspects of the code, removing or adding the asterisks. If you do need to update, you've made those changes after you brought the data in and you want everything to update, what you can do is you can actually right click on point groups, open this up, drop down options, and you can go apply styles from code set list to update everything in your drawing. That will force the update and change all of your survey lines along with the points. If you wish to do this even more efficiently, you can actually use the update all command up the top here to update everything in the drawing rapidly. Now, working on the editing side of things, so you've gone through, you've worked with your settings, you've updated all those. The point groups have come through as you would expect. Opening up point group link, we can see contourable is the only one being used for survey strings. Keep in mind there is still a relationship between the point groups within Stringer and the point groups within your tool space. If you find certain point groups have not been added, just go back to point groups, make sure you go update just to make sure there are any points here. Run the update tool again, and you can see I now have the rest of them added, such as trees. Now if I wish to edit anything within here, I can right click on here. I've got access to things such as the point list. This is looking through that entire point group and only giving me access to those points. Dropping it down further, I'm given access to points, which by right clicking I'm able to access the code editor, which will allow me to edit any of the codes currently found within that point group. So that's loading in now. I'm also able to run update Kogo points. I highly recommend just running the update all option though, as that will allow you to update everything at once, including the survey strings and the settings. Dropping this down further, I'm able to get even deeper into my data and start looking at my points, which I can then go and edit directly. Running right click and then going edit Kogo points allows me to edit every aspect of that point number. I don't want to actually edit anything, so I'll cancel out of that. But if you're not wishing to work with the points directly, you want to work with the survey strings, you can drop down survey strings, and by selecting one of those, I can drop that down to work with the code. Right clicking on the point itself, I'm able to edit different aspects of that point even deeper, doing edits that would actually apply to my entire survey string. So let's go and edit one. So up the top here, I can see I have an out of order string, 53140, so I would scroll down to find that one. I've already found it here. By selecting it, I get a highlight, making sure that I have selected the right string. Dropping that down further, I have a number of different options that I can apply to these points. By right clicking on the first one, you can see I have that edit Kogo point option again that we saw within the points list, but I also have my parameter commands found here, along with delete segment, reorder distance to next, and resolve using AI. So for this, I'm wanting to reorder this string, so I'm going to go reorder distance to next, making sure I'm working with that first point, which you can see is actually being highlighted by the circle. By selecting one of the points, you can see that circle is jumping around, so I can make sure that I'm selecting the right point through that highlight. Right clicking on this, I can go reorder distance to next to reorder that string as I would wish. You can see it's being reordered now. So I'm going to go now and apply some parameters. So I wish to apply it to 1493. So I scroll down to find that one. The highlight's making sure I'm selecting the right option. Right click on that and I can go 3-point arc. And you can see just how easily I'm going about editing these options. Let's run a line segment, switch it back to a line. You see just how easy that is for me to do. So it's making this process as efficient as possible. Over here, I've got the ability to delete a segment, so I have 30160, so I can go looking for that one. I found it here, I can drop that down, and if I need to, I can delete a segment from here. Open that up, delete segment, select the side that I wish to delete it from, and you can see me getting rid of that segment as quick as need be. By going down here, I can apply some further parameters, 60210. I just go looking for that. Highlighting, making sure I've got the right one, and I just want to apply a rectangle from 3 points on here. Going down to 60211, I want to edit this one, I just want to close this one off. And it's just really easy to go about and do now, really efficient to get into there and work with it. For larger jobs, this can get a bit, you can get a series of survey strings coming in, it can get a bit messy. I highly recommend this for more smaller jobs, but it can be very useful for those smaller jobs. When you're working with the bigger ones, I do still recommend using the survey line manager. You can run that through the create survey strings option down the bottom here. That will open up this interface, which we have improved in a number of different ways. Now you'll notice that I actually don't have any, I have the points being shown, but I don't have any labels. This is to make sure that I'm able to maneuver around as fast as possible. If I select any of the different aspects, I get access to the ribbons and I can still edit the various data aspects in here. You can see when I'm selecting one, it's actually popping back up the label and allowing me to do edits. But if I scroll in, you'll see that the rest of the points actually turn up. Now all of this is being controlled by the new settings option that you see here. By opening up settings, we're given access to the settings interface where I'm able to change the display and performance of all of this data. The first being the performance mode. This decides whether or not the anti-aliasing is kicking in or not for all of these points to make it as fast as possible. If you're finding that the survey strings manager is running slow, I highly recommend just lowering the performance mode count as it'll kick in faster at a lower number of points needed. Keep in mind the options that you see here that I'm going through currently will only affect the survey line manager. What I have within here will not edit the drawing in any way in regards to settings. Selection color allows you to choose the selection color. When you selected a point, you'll see that it highlights yellow. It's merely deciding what color that's going to be. You're also able to change the arc to chord rate, deciding the amount of segments that are being used when you're creating an arc and such. The label zoom level allows you to decide how deep you have to go before the label is going to turn up. So if I change this to 10, I can go OK, and I'm going to have to zoom in even further before those labels turn up. Label size merely allows you to change what the size is going to be. The show command allows you to choose which aspects of the label are going to be shown, again only within the survey line manager, not within the DWG. Font color allows you to decide how the font is going to be brought in. It can read the layer color if that is set up, but for now we're just going to be using the font layer color. Back color and back transparency are for creating a background to your layer, to your labels, meaning that they're able to pop, I guess would be the good word for it, allowing you to visually see them a bit clearer. Marker allows you to toggle on and off all markers within the drawing. So while I still have the labels, I no longer have the marker. If I was working with only my line work, this will make it far easier for me to just make sure that I'm only working with that line work. I can also change the marker size and the marker color as need be. So all of that is now able to be controlled from here. So very efficient, able to come in here, make those changes, and then you're able to get around the drawing far quicker. The less it's being shown on screen, the faster the software is going to react. So use those settings, learn to use them, and you'll be able to get everything running as smooth as silk. Now that we've brought some data in, we're actually able to switch over to the cadastral lines. And what we can do here is we're able to work with creating cadastral points. Now, when running cadastral lines, this is going to actually create some civil 3D points for us to work with. It doesn't necessarily have to be stringer points. Depending on how you set up your project, we'll decide how these are being created. The first thing we need to do though is just create a point in the drawing. I know many of you probably already know how to do this, but for anyone that is not sure, simply go to Home, drop down the points option, toggle on the point creation tools, and then just create a point and just select somewhere in the drawing. For this, I'm a numeric person. I've always used numeric, so I'm just going to call this 004. Point elevation, we'll give it an 100, and we'll just make sure that point has been created, which we can see that it has. Now that I've got my point, I can actually close this down, and I now want to work at, well, creating some cadastral lines. So I'm going to go back to Stringer Survey and open up the cadastral lines interface. This is due to the fact that I haven't linked everything, so I just want to drop this down and go Civil 3D Points Link, listen to my own advice, and go Create Update to add those points to it. Now if I go to Cadastral Lines, we can see that it's now loaded in. Now, by dropping down base point, you can see I only have one point number available, but I can also use this option here to select a point that's already within my drawing. Next point number is going to find the next available point number that is not in use. In this case, it's going to be point number 2, which would be expected from what I've only created one point. Point 2 is the next available point number. By dropping down description, you're given access to all of the codes that are currently being loaded in via your code set, which can be found down here. In this case, I'm using numeric, so I'm going to switch that over to numeric individual layers before selecting 004. as I wish to create more instrument stations. Speaking of, now we're able to break the information that we're about to import or create using groups. And what I mean by this is that you're now able to break this down. I can create a series of stations, which would be my traverse, and then I can create a second group, and that second group can house all of my radiations from station number 1. And then I can create a third group that has all of my radiations from station number 2. And I can continue creating those groups, and I can update all my information, making it easy to quickly and efficiently edit all of those different aspects of it. Let me show you what I mean. So let's create our first group. I'm going to call this traverse, or we'll just call it Trav1. Go OK. So all of my traverses are going to be applied to Trav1. They're going to be created on the 004 code. I'm creating them using bearing, but we do also have the turned angle option if you wish. This just allows you to turn based on a reference point. So I'm going to use bearing for now. We're going to go at 90 degrees for a distance of, let's make this 15 meters to make it easy. I don't have to use meters. You'll see here I also have access to links, chains, feet, and inches. You can toggle between those as you wish. Elevation will go at 100, but I am also able to choose between elevation difference and grade. But we'll stick with 100 for now on fixed elevation. Numeric's good, everything looks good. I'm going to go add traverse. So you can see that traverse line's been created. It's shot off to that station 2 due to the auto zoom function you can see up here. I'll turn that off for future ones, but that just takes me to the what point I've just brought in. So let's enter a few more of these. We'll make another one at 180. We'll keep it at 15. You can see just how easy it is for me to enter this data in. We'll make this one 25. So I've gone and entered this data, but I'm actually able to still edit any of these. So let's say, oh no, point 2 wasn't meant to be there, it was actually meant to be at 45 degrees. I'm just going to change that to 45, hit enter, and you'll see that that actually moved the point. Some of the eagle-eyed viewers may have also noticed that it actually moved point 3 and point 4 as well, because they're based on that point 2. Point 2 is being used as its base, so therefore it's going 180 again from there at 15 meters to create point 3. Same with point 4. All of that is being updated at the same time. But I can do the same with the radiations. I don't want to work with my traverse anymore. I'm wanting to work with radiations. So I'd go plus to add in a new point group, or not point group, a new cadastral lines group. And this time I'm going to enter rad 1. Go OK. And now I'm able to work with a new set of data. I can still switch back to traverse 1, but now I have a separate set of data which I'm able to edit. So let's say I want to create radiations off of point 2. So I've selected point 2, that's now being used. These aren't going to be stations, these are actually going to be title markers. So 004 for a title peg. Let's put in a bearing of, we'll say 275 for a bearing, actually not 275, I'll end up leading back on ourselves. I'll make this 320. At a distance of 6.58 meters. I can go add side shot. You can see that that point's now being formed. I can continue doing this. We'll do another one at 45 degrees. Make this 7.62. And I'm using the side shot command now, so it's not switching off of that base point 2. I can very quickly go ahead and add all this data in. But again, I have the ability to edit this. If this wasn't meant to be 320, this was meant to be 340. I can go ahead and edit that. You can see that point's moving in the background. If it wasn't meant to be 6.75, it was actually meant to be 10 meters. I'm able to change that. I have free control over all of my points, and by separating them into groups, I'm able to quickly figure out which data is associated with which point. My traverse is applied to Trav 1, my radiations are on the radiation groups, and I just have to separate them based on group. I can still have them all in the same group. I don't have to split them. It's just an easy way of keeping track of all of your data. Once you're done, you're able to export this out as a table into your drawing, or I can export it out directly as a CSV file. So you still have those options as well. If you've made an entry that you do wish to get rid of, you are able to use the delete entry option to get rid of that entry entirely. Once these points have been added, they've been added as Civil 3D points under Contourable, as you can see over here. If I go to Civil 3D and look at Contourable, we can see that these points have been added in directly. So you're able to work with them exactly the same as how you would normally. By going to Convert to Kogo points, we'll have a look at the final thing I'll show you today. Now, what I've got here is a series of points that have been created through Carlson. So these aren't points, these are actually groups. If you wish to work with these for whatever reason, you can drop down the tool space up top, go to Drafting and Annotation by selecting one of those points. Cool. By switching to Drafting and Annotation, you've got the points drop down over here. By selecting this option here, you can actually choose whether or not to select all the different aspects of that point. By opening up properties, I can actually see what's making all those up. So down here, what I'm most interested in is those attribute names. So elevation 2 and description 2. I want to actually pull that elevation out to be used as my, the point's elevation that I'm going to be creating, and I'm wanting to rip out that description information to be used as my point description. So switching back to Civil 3D, what we're going to run, I'll just get rid of the properties, and we'll reopen the Stringer Toolspace. Within the Stringer Toolspace, I'm going to go create Kogo points. I'll just scroll out a bit here so we can see what's going on. I'm going to select the Create Kogo Points, open that up so I get access to all of my creation options, and I'm going to go Convert Kogo Points. From here, I'm able to search through. I'm wanting to select the layer that all of my data is on that I'm wishing to convert. I can go through and manually select that if I wish. I don't wish to do that. I have a selection tool here. I'm able to select that, select the object I wish to convert, and that will find the layer for me. So everything on this layer is going to be converted from the Carlson points into the Stringer points. Next up, I'm able to choose what the actual data is currently. So at the moment, we're able to search for text, mtext, block references, and points. All of these can be converted into Stringer points. In this case here, I have a series of block references created through Carlson, so I'm going to select that option. Next, the elevation. At the moment, it's going to read the elevation from the block reference itself. I'm not wanting that. I'm actually wanting it to pull the information from the attribute that we saw previously. So I'm just going to select attribute, and then I'm going to put in the attribute name. So elevation 2 is what we saw. I'm then going to switch over to descriptions and do the same here. I know that it's the attribute that I'm wishing to select, and I'm wanting it to use description 2. Down the bottom, we have the styles that are going to be used to actually create these points. Alpha coding is what's being used here, so I can leave that, but I do have access to other ones if I wish. Any codes that it doesn't find within the code set table, it will use the default point styles, so just keep that in mind. And then when you're done, simply go create Kogo points to create those points within your drawing. So let's just change the scale of these points. So I'll just make it something a bit more reasonable. And if we scroll in, we can actually see that we've got a surface being formed based on our new Stringer points. And if I scroll in and look at these points themselves, I can move them to see that they're now tied to that surface. It's looking exactly how it did before. I've got the elevations to be the same, and the point code is also being used. Keep in mind that points being created this way are not using the Civil 3D tool space. If I drop this down, you can see that all of my points are not being loaded into all points here, but they are being loaded into Stringer. So just keep that in mind if you're working with this. That's all I had to go through today. We've had a look at the new Toolspace that's been added to the software. We've gone through the changes that have been applied to the settings, had a look at the changes that have happened to Stringer Connect, the new import options and the reduced coordinates. We've then gone through having a look at the edits using the Toolspace option, how you can use the Toolspace to efficiently work with your data and do any edits you may wish. We've gone through to display and performance settings that can be found within the Stringer Line Manager, along with working with the Cadastral Line Manager itself and looking through the new convert to points. Thank you for attending the webinar today. If there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, thank you for attending and we'll see you next time.